Before we start today's show, we want to invite you to stick around at the end of the episode to enjoy a preview of a new podcast that premieres on July 14th. As the industry's exclusive cannabis podcast network, MJBulls is proud to present Women Leading in Cannabis. Join host Kira Reed each week for inspirational discussions with women who are leading the cannabis industry. For too many years, families of children with devastating illnesses have felt helpless as they watch their child suffer. Today, they're taking matters into their own hands and finally finding relief treating their child with cannabis. This is one family's story.
Hi, thanks for tuning in to another episode of
Love and Cannabis.
I am Nina.
I'm Osiris.
And we are the proud parents of Aiden.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode.
Hello.
I hope everyone's doing well.
Today, we're going to talk about stigma and stereotypes.
Oh, this is so huge.
Yes.
It's just unbelievably huge.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
As it relates to the Black family and cannabis.
Well, I mean, cannabis in itself is still trying to overcome its stigma. I mean, with the media marketing, you can't really market on television with cannabis to really try to remove that stigma. But yet, some people are, I mean, it's becoming almost mainstream in a way because now people are hearing more about it. CBD's have been like the trailblazer. So it's changed. So it went from underground now to people wearing suits and ties and getting involved in the industry. So it's interesting how it's changed. But the stigma is still there, as well as the stereotypes.
Exactly.
And that's one of the things we're going to talk about today. Well, one or two, and actually it's one of many things we're going to talk about today. But first off, how do we define stigma? You know, like when you hear stigma, like, do you have a definition already in your mind? So when we did some research looking it up, stigma is an association of disgrace or public disapproval with something such as an action or condition. So the stigma of cannabis is already stained. So that's like, you know, already negative.
Yeah, definitely. So the stigma around cannabis is that you are stoned, unfunctional, criminal, drug dealer,
lazy. Oh, yeah, the stoner one. That's the stoner type.
The stoner.
Yeah.
You do not have any impact on society.
Oh, yeah. You're the worst. You're the bottom.
You're bringing your community down.
Or you're a hippie. One of the other ones was this hippie. You're the hippie community, yes. But you know what's so interesting is that it almost affected all races to a certain extent because, you know, people in jazz, people of color were you smoking marijuana back in the 30s, 40s. And then you had whites in the 60s, hippies that were using cannabis. And then, you know, you look in Jamaica, they grow it everywhere. So they were using it. I mean, it's interesting. And then now with the Hispanic community in Mexico, they were using it, but it was not used in the way that we thought at this time, you know, and it's changed. It's just evolved to where it is now like, oh, it's medicine.
Yeah.
It is medicine. Literally medicine.
But unfortunately, for some people, the stigma
still stays.
It still stays.
They hold on to it.
Mm-hmm.
Outdated information and incorrect information.
Exactly.
But, you know, that was more, I don't even think it was a political movement. It was more of an economic. It was all based on economics. I mean, there was a verse even in the Bible that talks about they were using cannabis back then. For
medical reasons, yeah.
Even spiritual.
Yeah.
Mostly spiritual, they were using it back then.
So we're going to define stereotype.
Yeah, stereotypes is another part of that goes into stigma. They just almost
they can overlap. Yeah,
they overlap, interrelated. So, defining stereotype is an overgeneralized belief about a particular category of people. Stereotypes are generalized because one assumes that the stereotype is true for each individual person in the category. Which such generalizations may be useful when making quick decisions. They be erroneous when applied to particular individuals. Stereotypes encourage prejudice and may arise for a number of reasons.
Yeah, so this is a big one.
That's more or less what you could look at as it's subjective.
Exactly.
It becomes subjective. So, I mean, if you're thinking about the stereotypes basically just what we define stigma is in the sense of the stoners, the hippies, the criminals, and and people become labeled with such to the point where they're like, oh, well, is this right for people to be labeled as such? And they're nowhere near that. I mean, just looking at our family, we're a black family. We have our son who's using cannabis to treat for his epilepsy. I mean, already he's going to be labeled. He's already had the stereotype. Young, black, live in an urban city. So his life is being already stamped. But as parents, we have to change that. I mean, we're typically not cannabis families to begin with. I mean, I've had my experience when I was in my teens, when it was first introduced to me, from some guys I used to hang out with. They were like, hey, try it. I'm like, okay. I did it just because everybody else was doing it. Didn't care for much of it. I've seen, the negative sides and the positive sides in the sense that it actually relaxed me, allowed me to think differently, have conversations that I would normally not have. But then the other side of it is, depending on your strains, now that I've learned and educated myself, there were certain strains that would make me sleepy, make me not want to do anything than just have the munchies. But at the same time, I was never feeling violent like how alcohol used to do. But I used to just want to just hang out and just, relax, have conversation, and eat a lot. Basically, those munchies. But fast forwarding now, 30 years, somewhat 40 years later, wow, hold on a second. I'm using something that I really didn't think was going to be a part of my future. I'm using now to help treat my son and his epilepsy. So my perception had to change. And I think that's what needs to happen.
Exactly. So for me, my personal experience was I kind of believed the stereotype and the stigma. I was one of those people that say no to drugs. Like, I believe that bad people smoked pot. That if you were a drug user and you were bad for the community, you were just a bad person and I really believed it. I did not smoke. I was the poster person for say no to drugs.
That's funny. I grew up in a community that just turned to drugs. I remember during the crack era, it was bad.
So, I really didn't think that there was I didn't even think that there was any medical use. It was just, you're just a person that just did drugs. If you did any weed, you just did drugs, and you were a bad person, and you were doing some bad things to your body.
You just wanted to get high.
And you just wanted to get high.
Yeah. And just younger and younger people are using it. And I've known people to use it because they couldn't function without it. Like, literally could not get through the day unless they had some in the morning just to get through the day. And I never understood that until now. I'm like,
they were self-medicating.
I mean, what's so interesting is you look at it, you compare using cannabis versus smoking cigarettes to deal with stress. You have a positive effect using cannabis than you would with cigarettes. Cigarettes, you're just pretty much slowly killing yourself in long term, basically. And with cannabis, you're healing yourself.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, but depending how the media and how it's being marketed, you got to twist the language. You just it's the way we have those conversations. And it's interesting.
And in the black community, especially, you deal with a lot of stress.
And negativities already to begin with.
Already. And I think, and definitely stereotypes. So these people who are basically smoking, they probably just use it as an outlet to relax. Just how people use wine at night.
Yep. Get that edge
But no one's
off.
Judging those people who are having their glass of wine at night. But yet the people who were using their cannabis to wind down, they went to jail.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for decriminalization. Yeah, they went to jail for it. And long.
For a very long time.
Ruined people's lives. So, how do you, as a person who's been arrested for something now that's legal, and I'm in the jail and I'm looking at the world now and it's completely changed, and it's like, hold on, I only had an ounce and I'm doing 3 to 5, 10 years maybe. And there's people out there making millions of dollars off of it.
Yeah, it's not fair.
It is absolutely absurd. And then if you're black, you've already got a triple stamp on you. You're almost done. So it's how do you rebuild? Exactly. You really literally have to be strong-minded and have a strong will and be like, okay, once I get out, I have a game plan. I'm going to change. But then they have to also expunge your records. So you can feel free to state that, you don't have a felony record. Because again, something like this, a plant, you're being arrested for and have your life ruined for.
Exactly. Just in the last 2 years is when I started doing some research, particularly when we started using it with Aiden. And then I found out, like, wow, they've been using this medically from...
in the late 1800s.
In the 1800s.
Yeah, in this country anyway, because they were using it in the other countries where it's naturally come from.
Yeah. I was like, what? Wait a minute. So there was this particular... In the 1930s, when the Marijuana Tax Act was placed, there was this doctor named Dr. William Woodward. He testified on behalf of the American Medical Association, the AMA. He told Congress that the American Medical Association knows of no evidence that marijuana is a dangerous drug.
Even back then.
And he warned that the prohibition loses sight of the fact that future investigation may show that there are substantial medical uses for cannabis. But Congress ignored his statement.
Yeah, we know why.
So I was like, wait a minute. I believed everything that they were telling me. And yet this happened, and they knew that there was medical use for this, and they ignored the doctor?
Well, I mean, you had to understand what was going on back then. They were literally trying to control every aspect of our lives. I mean, you think about it. If you have this plant growing in your backyard, including the hemp, you could literally separate yourself from needing to be dependent on the government to take care of you. You could feed yourself and you can treat yourself.
And they didn't want that.
Of course. That's the end picture. Because look at the endless possibilities what you can do with this plant.
You know,
that's freedom.
They
want you on that plantation.
You know, it changed me, because I was like, so how many people lives could have been different?
Yes.
With the introduction of this old, and from the 1930s, and then they could have been conducting research
since then. But they have been.
But they just didn't.
They wouldn't release that. Trust me, they have, because that's why the government has certain patents. And certain pharmaceutical companies have patents. They know exactly what they're doing. So for them, it's all about control. And that's why sometimes I'm kind of concerned about this industry. Will it end up back into their hands? While all these companies are growing and growing, you know, expanding their CBD product line and their hemp product line, you know, all these things that they're growing and they're becoming more valuable. You know, everyone's been talking about this industry that, you know, at some point, one of the major players, pharmaceutical companies, will come in and just basically buy them out. And then eventually it'll end up back in their hands. But this is the plant for the people. That's my thought. It's the plant for the people. And it's crazy in a way. It's like it's going to see like it's going to be playing itself out.
Yeah, I mean, even some days I get nervous. So we're able to get his CBD. We can order. We can go to even some drugstores. And I'm wondering if that's going to stop.
Well, I look at it this way. As long as there's stigma, it's going to be it's moving quickly, but to get to where we need to be, it's still some time. But also we still have to get over the stigma. That part is still there.
It is still there. I'll give you an example. So Aiden, in pre-K, he had a private nurse. And the nurse came up to me and said, oh, I think Aiden needs to be on at least 3 seizure meds. And I said, he is. I said, he's on this, and he's on the CBD. He goes, oh, the CBD doesn't count.
Shows you how much she knew.
I said, excuse me? I said, there is research behind this. Oh, no, I don't know. You know, if it's that, you know, we don't know about that. I said, oh, here we go. Like, it was just always this battle. Even though there is research, like Osiris said, the stigma is still there.
Yeah, and
people are not letting go.
They're not. And also, I wonder how much of that stereotype also goes into some of the prejudice people have, especially when they're interacting with, a black family. Because sometimes they say, oh, you black people are paranoid. Like, no, there's just certain signs sometimes that you pick up. There's certain energies. Like, for instance, our son, he's delayed. So he gets services. So he was getting PT, the OT, and speech. And when we used to have the providers come into the home, I remember initially the first provider came over to the house. She wouldn't engage with me. At the time, I was a stay-home dad, so I was always the one going to be there. So I needed to know what's going on. I needed to be involved. So I was involved. My wife and I, Nina and I were sitting there. She would have more conversations with Nina than she would with me. And I'm trying to figure out, like, hello, I'm over here. Talk to me. And so in my mind, I'm like thinking, is this something personal? And I couldn't understand it. So I would always try to redirect her. It would always go back. She'd feel annoyed. This continued on with even the people that worked in her office and people that we met. It wasn't until to one of the providers who came over working with Aiden. And I asked him, I said, what's going on with some of these service providers? Why they're not engaging in conversations with me if I'm going to be the one home? He says, look, I'm going to be honest. Most of the homes that we go into, the father's not there. It's always the mothers that we deal with. So you have to understand that these are the things that they pick up and say, you know what? He's not going to be here. Anyway, I'll just deal with the mother. The mother's the one that makes all the decisions. And that basically opened my eyes and I said, okay, so that's somewhat of a stereotype. And that could be a stigma, especially if you're a black male, black father. There's times I walk with Aiden and I get this reception. People look at me, oh, yeah, keep it up. Oh, I'm so proud of you. You guys look great. And it's like, we're just walking down the street. His father holding his son's hand. And for me, being a first-time dad, never really having a male figure in my house that I can call dad, this is new. So I'm doing this as I go along, but I'm learning so much about myself, that dynamics and understanding stigmas, stereotype, especially being a black male with a son who's using cannabis. So this is a totally different level. And also the fact that he has a disability, currently has a disability. So for us, we have to think long term because there's an issue going on in our urban city, our town, where we're noticing that there's a pattern of kids who have disabilities, who are in these, who have IEPs in these programs. By the time they reach 18, their future seems unset. Yeah. Some of them can't make it academically because they didn't learn anything. They were just being passed on. They're being retained. So now they're 18, can't have a job, don't really know how to fill out an application. And now they're looking at what is their future going to be hold. Yeah. And so there's a pipeline. Now we're calling it a pipeline to prison. Depending on the family that they're growing up in, it's a possibility. It's a pipeline. And in fact, I recall personally that I have one of my former students. I've worked in the school for 15 years. There's a young man who was also in the same situation as Aiden, who was, disabled, basically. He was in a special program. Once he turned 18, he's out there. He gets himself arrested because he was part of a gang that was involved in attempted murder. Now he's sitting in Rikers. So for us, we have, as parents, black parents especially, now we have to think about our son in a different way that many other parents may not have to think about. Like his interactions with society, his interactions with what you see on TV, with the media, with police officers. Luckily for us, we have best friends who are a police officer. So he gets to see that at the site. So he has an interaction with him. So it could be a different outlook. So as parents, like, this is a different level of thinkings that we have now.
Yeah, I do feel that way. So I feel like when I'm with moms, I feel like I do think differently than them.
Yeah.
Like I'm just
their issues, not our issues.
I'm like, yeah, I'm not thinking that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm thinking, you got to get him outside, get him some exercise, work his brain. We got to, figure out his diet plan. We got to make sure that he's getting the CBD on time. We got to worry about, the future too. Is he going to have the resources that he needs to survive if we're not around? I
do feel like me and you, like a friend of mine said, you two beat to your own drum. I said, we have to.
We have no choice. It's just us.
It's just us. And we definitely have to be conscious of what we do every single day. And we're always thinking ahead.
Yeah, we got into the point where now we split our roles where I'm teaching him survival skills, how to get dressed, how to brush his teeth, how to, put his clothes on, how to pick out his clothes for the day. Well, Nina works with him academically. And it's like, okay, and it's structured. It literally has a structure because we have to prepare him for the future. And again, for us, for some parents, they take it for granted. Like, okay, I'll get him dressed so I can hurry up and get my day started. I'll feed him so he can. It's like it has to be something like programmed with him. So it's innate. It's innate. So we're like on survival mode early.
Very much so. Very much so.
It's scary And I think about it, it's like, we're almost living in fear because of these stigmas. I mean, okay, the kid's using cannabis to treat himself. And then on top of that, he's black. It's like, okay, so how does this work? How is he going to fit in society unless the stigma is lifted?
Exactly. So it's so funny. I was like, when Aiden's older and he hears about him being one of the first kids to have a medical marijuana card, and is the stigma going to be lifted, or is he going to get teased, or he's going to feel bad that, he's a cannabis kid? Yeah,
because I think he's the only one in his school.
Yes.
He's the only one in his school.
Yeah. So is he going to be happy that we did this, or he's going to feel that resentment
that we should have done something else?
Yeah, that he's known as this cannabis kid. So I don't know.
Yeah, but
if the stigma is not truly lifted, he may feel a certain type of way.
And again, I to your point, thinking about, do we go out there, become socially involved with him, where everybody gets to see him, get to know him? Someone could look at it as like, we're parading him. We're turning him into a poster child. But it's not. It's bringing awareness. It's like, what are you trying to say about this child? Because, I mean, if you go into academia, they have documents stating, black children already, especially black males, are being already labeled, especially coming from the inner city, are already labeled as such as there's only 3 ways out for them: drugs, prison, death. It's like, really? But for my family, having 2 other brothers, we've broken that stereotype and that stigma. We've already moved away from that. All have graduated, all have their degrees from college. But still, sometimes it's still not enough to break that stigma. And the same thing is going to happen with cannabis. Just because you have research, just because you have people healing from it or you benefit from it, they're still holding on to the stigma. It's like that generation that's holding on to that stigma are going to be the ones that are going to be benefiting from it, but they don't realize it.
Yeah, I had a friend still call it a chemical. I'm like, it's not a chemical.
It's a plant, people.
I'm like, oh, Jesus. Sometimes I just don't know what to say or do.
Yeah, if you want to work with
sometimes I'm not in the mood to get into it.
Yeah, I know.
Depending on the personality.
Yeah, it's like, how do you simplify it? It's like, the pills you're popping is a chemical. That's a chemical. It made in a laboratory from different things. Here you're using a plant and you're just processing it differently. You're putting it in a way that your body can absorb it. That's it.
Yeah. One time I was taking CBD at night, and I told a coworker, I took CBD this morning. And he said, oh, you did? You don't seem high. I'm like, because I'm not. Like, it doesn't make you high, whatever that means.
You know what's so crazy? With the age of technology and information, people are still clueless.
Very clueless. So what you're saying is that it's going to take a very long time.
It has to become a movement on a large scale. It has to be a educational social movement. And I think for you brands out there that are looking to it, you're just gonna have to go grassroots.
Yeah, and
if we're gonna change this, and it has to be done collectively.
It has to be, because it's so deep rooted. I remember you gave a guy some CBD coffee, and he said he was nervous. He was like, "Oh, am I gonna feel a certain way?
Am I gonna be like gonna get drug tested and it's gonna show up?" I'm like, it's CBD coffee, bro. Stop.
Yeah, it's going to take a while, Osiris. It's a long time, I think.
But it's scary. It's scary. And I remember just stating in our last podcast when I was at the town hall and I mentioned, how is medical marijuana going to be dealt with in schools? I mean, it wasn't everybody's problem. It's not their issue. But the thing is, they're not looking down the road, especially if you're a parent who has a child with an ailment, because people don't realize that there's a large number of young black boys, I have to go back, that have been identified as having autism or if on the spectrum. Not to take away from, white children too, but the numbers growing for black males with autism on a spectrum. And I saw a number of them in that meeting. And for them, they don't see that this is something that could benefit them.
Yes.
And that's how I see. I'm like, I haven't worked in schools. I've seen so many children, because I worked in the inner city, that could have benefited from using CBD or cannabis of some form.
Yeah.
It is absurd that, and then now these kids or older, 18, 19 years old.
If they used it when they were young, it could have changed. It could have changed their track or their
future.
Yeah, definitely.
And so it goes back to what we're doing is about for our son. And, it's no longer about us enjoying life, taking things easy, just, plan for our future, hoping everything. It's like we are on defense mode.
All the time.
But that could be nerve-wracking. So we got to be on cannabis just to take us off the edge. Yeah, because every day is like, go, 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 go. And it's like, at some point, your body's going to break down, your mind, your emotions. I mean, just talking about putting this podcast together, we got emotional. So I'm thinking like, what's going to happen with Aiden? Like, how is that going to look? Are we doing the right thing? Are we doing enough? Tomorrow's not promised to anyone, because I had a number of friends pass away recently. And it's like, I was on that path at one point. So it's like, what would happen if I had passed away? Where would Aiden be at this point with you? Because now you're alone. So these are scary thoughts. And it's like, where do we turn? What do we do? And how do we do it? And the stigmas don't help because not a lot of people are going to open their door, especially if you go in the mainstream that you need help and support from them. They're not going to be able to do it. So we have to create our own support system. And I think that's one of the things that we do with this podcast is like reaching out to parents and saying, hey, you're not alone. We understand because we're going through it. And people are not talking about it enough.
No.
And that's disheartening because people have a lot to share and they're afraid to share it, or they're so caught up in their world not knowing what to do, they don't know who to turn to share it. And for us, it's like we had to overcome some fears and anxieties about being stereotyped, about the stigma. We had to be strong, and that's what's so beautiful about this plant. It had empowered us to do what we're doing.
It did. It's amazing.
It is amazing. It's like we got this mini movement within our family, and now we have our family members who are basically on board now and supporting us
and reaching out.
They're like, I remember when we first started using cannabis to help our son and just our family in general. Our extended family members later on are sending us messages, emails. Hey, did you see this article on cannabis? Hey, did you see this? Hey, did you know about this? It's like really?
It took a little bit, but people are on board now.
They're coming around because it's starting to be somewhat mainstream. I mean, there's still some moments. I remember I was talking to somebody, one of my family members was sitting in the car. It almost looked like a drug deal. Like, he's sitting there like, okay, hey, about the CBD thing. I'm like, we're in a car alone. So why are we whispering? We could talk about CBD. We could talk about cannabis openly. Yeah, no, I know. He's still whispering. I'm like, oh my God. That stigma's still there. That fear is still there. And it's crazy. And it'll take us and what we do with just our family alone to change it. Yeah. And we don't hide. I mean, I have to be honest. We've been open with all our doctors when we first started using it with Aiden, and we've been very open. And we've put it out there and saying, hey, look, you're either with us or you're not with us. There's hundreds and hundreds of doctors out there. We will find the right one that fits our needs and are willing to work and help us heal our child. That's it. That's really what we're looking for.
That's it. Yeah, so basically the summary of this is release the stigma, release the stereotypes.
Yeah, let it go.
Let it go.
Yeah, after a while, it just becomes you. But until you're in a situation where you need it, are you going to let go of that stigma?
Oh, I think so.
Oh.
So if you're in pain and it's helping you,
yeah,
then you would really be advocating for this.
Exactly.
Until it's time. Yeah,
exactly. No ill side effects. I still don't understand how people could watch these pharmaceutical commercials and still walk away and say, I'm going to see if this is right for me.
Yeah. So,
all right, folks. It's been an interesting topic, and it's really hits home when you think about it with your child. And for us, again, as being a Black family and thinking about our son, all the many stigmas and fears that we have to address and overcome as we help him on his journey. It's scary. It's really scary, but also we feel empowered because we believe we're on the right track and we're doing the right thing.
So that is it, I think.
I believe it is, but there's so much more. And I think the next one is about decriminalization because, again, just going into the thought process of our child could be set up to be going on to this trajectory to the, from the suspensions to the prison system, this decriminalization, how much is it helping? Is it hurting? Is it doing anything really to help remove the stigma, one? And secondly, is it allowing those people who've been hurt by it to recoup whatever they've lost?
Okay, so I think, that'd be a good topic. The decriminalization path that the state is going through right now.
Many states. But in New York, it's interesting.
Yeah, very.
All right, guys. Thank you for spending another day with us. And we look forward to, chiming in the next time.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Have a great day.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Love and Cannabis. I'm Nina.
I'm Osiris.
And we're the proud parents of
Aiden. Be strong.
And stay empowered.
Tell me, boy, you make me so bored. You need to walk the other way. I tell you once more. Please get out of my way. I don't want you no more. We're done here, boy. I know you think you're so fine, but you can't see it. I've been wanting to
Hi, my name is Kira Reed, and I'd like to invite you to be inspired by the women who are leading in the cannabis industry. Each week, we will discuss empowerment, leadership, and what it means to be a woman in charge in marijuana, hemp, and CBD. As the founder of the Women Empowered in Cannabis community, I have had the great pleasure to get to know many brilliant and talented women who are CEOs, executives, politicians, advocates, and community leaders that are focused on creating a cannabis economy that is just, fair, and equal. We'll learn how these women make decisions, how they navigate a predominantly male industry, and what they're doing to level the playing field for women. I hope you'll join us.